it's something that's constantly evolving and growing.
En el campo los negros que trabajan en el campo y los negros que trabajan en la casa hacienda.
Toma, eso, vaya.
Hay que sentir ese ritmo, esa es la sensación ternaria, ¿no? del Landó.
I would dare say, and I hope I don't piss anybody off, but I would dare say that the connection between jazz and Afro-Peruvian music is much more organic, natural, and direct than any other music in Latin America. ¿Alguna vez has escuchado en inglés? ¡Qué imbécil! Before we go any further, before we get into the good stuff, I wanted to let you know about an incredible opportunity called Journey to Peru Behind the Scenes. In the description of this video, you're going to find a link, and it's going to take you to a video that's going to show you behind the scenes what all of this work is all about, what Afro-Peruvian jazz music is all about. And in that video, there'll be an invitation for you to join us, myself and the band, here in Peru for a week-long tour where you're going to experience what it's like to live and breathe inside of Afro-Peruvian jazz music. So you know what to do. It's right there in the description, and it'll take you to this. You're going to plug in your email address and your phone number so that we can send you the materials, and you'll be off and running in this like wonderland that is Afro-Peruvian jazz music here in Peru. Have you ever heard a sound that transported you to another part of the world? Have you ever heard something like that? Right now, I want to introduce you to something called Afro-Peruvian jazz music. This is a type of music that brings together the freedom, the democracy of jazz music with the tradition, the deep rooted tradition of Afro-Peruvian music, which takes place along the coast of Peru. So what is Afro-Peruvian jazz music? Well, in my estimation, right, those of us who have been born and raised in Peru have a specific point of view about music. And jazz music is an American art form, right? It's a native to American art form. And where this music comes together with Afro-Peruvian music is where musicians that have a specific global sensitivity kind of come together and live together.
Cada una con su propia historia, lo que es la música afroperuana y ese sentimiento del jazz, ¿no? que tiene todo ese espíritu de libertad, de improvisación. Lo que se da es una combinación de historia, de trascendencia de cada uno, que en un momento se logra unir.
Una combinación de dos culturas, la cultura afroamericana con la cultura afroperuana, uniéndose, la denominación es jazz afroperuano.
So the music represents not only the values and the aesthetics of jazz music, but also the values, the aesthetics, and the point of view of music that goes back centuries in Peru. And this unique cross-section is where the artistry of Afro-Peruvian jazz music not only pays tribute to the tradition, both in jazz and traditional coastal music from Peru, known as Afro-Peruvian music, and not only pays homage to the traditions, but it also looks way into the future. Afro-Peruvian jazz music hasn't been around forever. And in fact, I would say, most of us would say, that it was the great Richie Zellen, a guitar player, who in the 80s, right, put out a record that actually used the term Afro-Peruvian jazz. And as far as anybody can tell, that was probably the first expression that used that terminology, right? And from there, there's been lots of different projects and different artists involved in Afro-Peruvian jazz music, to the point where now we have artists practicing this music all over the world, not just in Peru. So it's something that's constantly evolving and growing, but certainly I think maybe one of the newest voices, you know, in jazz music to come from Latin America. So I want you to check out some of these grooves and rhythms, right? And in Afro-Peruvian jazz music, I think there's many, but there's two principal grooves that are at the heart and soul of this music. And the first one is called Landó. Landó is a rhythm that's in 12/8 time, but it's felt both in 12/8 time and 6/4 time. So literally with a Landó, you have a groove that at the same time, some players are feeling it in 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and other players are feeling it in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, which sound really different, but together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1.
Patrones se crearon para acompañar danzas. Entonces este es el patrón con que se acompaña la danza del Landó. Es una adaptación del samba Landó, que fue un ritmo creado por la familia Santa Cruz, por Nicomé y Santa Cruz.
1, 2, 3, pero con el acento que es pum, pa, pum, pum, pa, pum, pa, pum, pum. Hay que sentir ese ritmo, esa es la sensación ternaria, ¿no? del Landó. Ese sentimiento lento que tiene, y al mismo tiempo estás llevando el 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Una sensación que le llaman afro. Esa combinación que parece blues, pero en realidad es como que es un sentimiento, ¿no?
That's called a polyrhythm, right? And that's the basic groove of the Landó. Now, when you distribute that using all of the instruments and all those different things that go into play when Afro-Peruvian jazz music is being played, and then you add the sensibility of improvisation and freedom that happens in jazz, well, this is a very elastic groove that allows for all kinds of permutations and liberty and freedom, but yet grounded in this really extended bar, because the bar is 12 beats long. It's like 12/8 time, right? So it's a long bar. Doom, chat, doom, doom, chat, doom, chat, doom, chat, doom, doom, chat, doom, chat, doom, doom, chat, doom, doom, chat, doom, chat, doom, doom. That is a long bar. Right? So Landó has that magic behind it, and it brings to jazz music something that, as far as I know, is completely unprecedented in the history of the music. So this is a huge contribution that Afro-Peruvian jazz music is making to the color palette of world jazz. The second of these grooves is called Festejo. Now, Festejo in Spanish means to celebrate, celebration, so originally, right, in traditional Afro-Peruvian music, a festejo is fast, it's danced. It's actually kind of an erotic dance done in pairs. And it's really fun, and it's something that happens, both on a social level and also in shows.
Un ritmo de alegría, un ritmo que al mismo tiempo tiene un vocabulario, ¿no? que se ha ido desarrollando con los grandes exponentes de la música afroperuana.
Dice la historia que se bailaba el festejo después de las jornadas en el campo. En el campo, los negros que trabajaban en el campo y los negros que trabajaban en la casa hacienda festejaban. En un día domingo, unos festejaban en la casa hacienda y otros festejaban en los palenques o refugios.
In jazz music, what's interesting about this, and what I think I'm going to challenge you with, is that when you hear it for the first time, if you haven't heard a festejo, right, and you hear it for the first time, you might think that it sounds like other fast 12/8 grooves, like Cuban music maybe, right? And we get this a lot. People that just like, oh, is that Cuban music, right? Because there's a certain familiarity to it. And that comes from the fact that it's a fast groove in 12. So that could be Cuban. But here's the insight that makes it super cool and that makes it uniquely Afro-Peruvian. And that's the accentuation of these grooves.
Muchos patrones de festejo, pero el que más se difunde es este patrón de aquí. Hay otra variación que es
the way we do it here in Peru, right? It's like, say you have that 12/8 bar in Festejo, and it goes like this. In Cuba, you might hear downbeats. But here in Peru, you hear upbeats. And the downbeats, they're usually not even played. So even though this is a downbeat, our rhythms are chakati chakati tukutukun chakataka chukutukan kun kerum chukukata kukata kika chukutuka ki chukutuka. So everything's on the upbeat, right? Which is insanely different now that you kind of can compare to anything else in Latin America. It's really unique to coastal Peru, the festejo. So again, when now you adapt jazz and the sensibility, the aesthetic, the harmonic motion, you know, the melodic complexity of jazz to this groove, you've got some pretty badass Latin jazz. So how does Afro-Peruvian music and American jazz music, how do they fuse together in a way that's natural, in a way that's organic, in a way that isn't forced? Well, over these years, performing this music around the world and working with my Peruvian colleagues and American colleagues as well, over those years, I've come to kind of identify the most important aspects of each of these musics that are absolutely essential to the final product. And what's surprising about this is that this is not a big technical thing. It's more almost like a spiritual thing that's represented by these elements, right? So from the jazz side, right, it's super important and crucial that there be these three things. Number one, there has to be the inflection of the blues. There has to be some kind of reference to the inflection of the blues. Whether that's in the harmony, in a blue note here and there, whatever it may be, there has to be that present. If that isn't present, then the jazz component suffers, right? Number two, functional harmony, right? As opposed to just modal harmony all the time. You hear in world music especially, harmonic contexts that are typically modal, meaning that the harmony moves very slowly, right? Long periods of time on a certain chord and then things move around. Jazz music, specifically jazz music of the standard repertoire and so forth, is characterized by a functional harmony that actually takes you from one place to another, and chords move at a certain pace, right? And that gives jazz kind of its jazzy harmonic vibe. So that, to me, is an element that has to be brought in. If you lose that, then the jazz side suffers in this mix, in this fusion of sound, right? And then, of course, improvisation, right? If we're not improvising, if we're not playing over changes, right, from the functional harmony, then it's not really jazz, is it? So those three things are absolutely essential. Jazz has many other attributes, but those three have to be there if we're going to call something Afro-Peruvian jazz music. Now, from the Peruvian side, it gets really interesting. What I think are the absolutely crucial elements so that this music can sound natural and organic, right? So from the Peruvian side, from the coastal Peru side, these elements are, first of all, instruments, right? If we're gonna call something Afro-Peruvian jazz music, we really have to have the instruments there. And the key instruments are in the percussion family. The cajon, the quijada de burro, the jawbone of a donkey, and the cajita, which is a small trapezoidal wooden box. These three instruments are absolutely native to this music. And so if you don't include them in some fashion, and I'll explain what I mean, then you don't have Afro-Peruvian jazz. So you might say, well, what about if you don't actually have those instruments? Does that mean you can't do this music? No, it doesn't. But if you know the patterns and how these instruments are played, then those patterns, those concepts are gonna be played on other instruments. That's still Afro-Peruvian. But you know where they came from, right? And the drum set in Afro-Peruvian music is a great example of that, and I think we should do a whole thing just on the drum set because it's so important. But the idea is that these patterns come from these instruments. So you have to have the instruments. They have to be there, literally or spiritually, but they have to be there. Number 2, use of original rhythms and grooves. So we can't adulter Festejo, Landó, Zamacueca, Marinera, Valse Criollo. We can't adulter those. We have to be very respectful of that essence so that when we apply the improvisational nature of jazz and other concepts, it sounds natural because we have a respect for where those original rhythms come from. So we have to have that respect. Otherwise, it's not Afro-Peruvian, right? It's something else. And number 3, this one is really special. It's called guapeo. And guapeo may seem like an afterthought at first. What is guapeo? Well, guapeo are the shouts of enthusiasm, encouragement, etc. that happen during a session of criollo and Afro-Peruvian music in general. So you hear players, toma, eso, vaya, these kinds of calls, right? That is guapeo, right? It's guapeo. And we discovered in our journey with this music that unless the guapeo is present, it doesn't quite resonate as Afro-Peruvian music because guapeo is such an important part of the spiritual connection between players, instruments, and music. So this is a huge, huge, huge aspect of it that is absolutely crucial. So those are the 3 things from Peru and the 3 things from American jazz music that, in my estimation, have to be there for the end result to really, truly, and fully be able to be called Afro-Peruvian jazz music. And one last thing that I think is crucial to understanding the nuance and the special character of Afro-Peruvian jazz music is understanding how improvisation and how the aesthetic of the relationship between improvised parts is a natural occurrence in both jazz music and Afro-Peruvian music. So certainly in jazz music, you hear that the music is improvised and that people are improvising. And you might be familiar with that idea, that concept. Well, it's intrinsic to jazz music to have improvisation. But in Latin America, in other countries particularly, grooves are set up, in kind of a layered approach. So whether it's Brazilian music or Cuban music, there's layering that happens. So you have patterns that are being played by different instruments, but they're very much strict and stick to kind of a groove pattern, right? Salsa music, all of these Caribbean forms. They're patterns, right? And the job of these musicians is to make sure they stay on their pattern and everybody stays on their pattern. And over top of that, you may have soloists and other things. Well, in Peru, it doesn't work that way. First of all, there's no clave. There's no concept of clave. Nobody's playing a set rhythm against which other people relate. What we have is very similar to jazz. We have patterns, grooves, genres, all these different things that have certain patterns, but none of them are meant to be played the same way all the time. They're meant to be broken up. They're meant to be sped up, slowed down. There's all kinds of back and forth, in a traditional Afro-Peruvian setting. So as you can imagine, if both of these things have that magical aspect, then the connection is very natural. I would dare say, and I hope I don't piss anybody off, but I would dare say that the connection between jazz and Afro-Peruvian music is much more organic, natural, and direct than any other music in Latin America. Yeah, I just said that. And this is why. Because at the root of it, Afro-Peruvian music has the same intention that jazz music. And that is that comping is varied all the time. We break things up. We take back, we play more, we play less. Like there's all this back and forth in the traditional setting that's very unique to the way this music is performed. So it's natural then that the conversation can kind of flow between the improvisation taking place in the jazz world and the improvisation taking place in the Afro-Peruvian world. They come together almost like they're each other's alter ego. They're like meant to be. So as you can see, I'm very enthusiastic about my work with Afro-Peruvian jazz music and what it represents to the world, because the mission here, the mission of me talking to you right now and the mission of the band that I've led for 2 decades is to really spread the joy and the love of Afro-Peruvian music to you and to everyone around the world, because we believe that as cultures come together and be able to create these dialogues, then we're making the world a much, much safer and better place for everyone to enjoy. And this music is at the core of our heart and soul, and it's our gift from Peru to the rest of the world. So if you're enjoying this, I have a free gift for you that's available right here. If you click on this screen, you'll be able to download and check out some really interesting things. And I hope you'll enjoy it. It's totally free, and you'll also be a member of our inner circle once you do that. So I'll be able to communicate with you via email and some other forms so that we can stay in touch about Afro-Peruvian jazz music. I hope you enjoy the gift, because it made it with a lot of passion, heart and soul. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it's useful to you. You can get it right here on this screen. And finally, don't forget that for little bits and things that happen on the go, you can always check out my social media channels and find me there on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Flavor of the Month, we'll be there. So just check those out and follow us, and make sure you subscribe to this channel as well, because that's very helpful to the whole movement of Afro-Peruvian jazz music.